Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 77. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Sunday. Steelers Nation and the Pittsburgh Steelers season has officially come to a close with their fifth straight loss of the season, their sixth straight postseason loss. The streak continues, falling to the Baltimore Ravens 28-14 Saturday night in the wild card game. Pittsburgh season ends in disappointing fashion. That's one word for it, but more of the same. A lot to talk about today, Dave. How you doing?
I would say happy Sunday, but I think Derrick Henry just ran for another 20 yards here. I could get into the whole gloom, despair, and agony on me, but I think I will spare the people when it comes to that. Look, I mean, all too familiar position this morning, right?
It is. It is more of the same. Pittsburgh being one and done, more of the same in terms of the last 8 years. And then in terms of this losing streak, more of the same. Slow starts, no run game, defense that has many questions, not playing up to the Steelers standard. And so, Dave, Sunday, a day of rest, and the Steelers are resting from now until when their season starts back up in terms of meaningful action next September. So 28-14, and frankly, to me, maybe the most striking part of that is the 14-point deficit does not really tell the story of how Pittsburgh was so thoroughly dominated. So I want to, in a moment, backtrack at the injuries, inactive, some weirdness there, just to do the housekeeping. But off the top, to talk about this game, what is your 30,000-foot view, Cliff Notes version on what the heck went wrong in this defeat?
Let's see. Defensively, you could not. We knew going into this first and foremost. This is a Ravens team that was going to be without Zay Flowers. That was something that was leaning in the favor, obviously, of the Steelers in that situation. Should have allowed them to concentrate a little bit more effort in defending the run. Most notably, Derrick Henry, and then an offshoot of that, obviously, would be Lamar Jackson, while at the same time trying to limit what that offense could do with their tight ends, two very talented guys in Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. They, right from the get-go, once again, you saw the Ravens come out and said, okay, you're going to try to defend the Derrick Henry and really fly down into the box and try to prevent that. We're going to get back on the zone read with Lamar Jackson, something that, while we've seen it throughout the season when it comes to the Ravens, not something that they've leaned heavily on overall throughout an entire game. Well, they certainly did that. Lamar Jackson did a great job of reading that. The Steelers weren't scraping over the top while sending an edge guy down to concentrate on Henry. They were getting beat up bad. Even on some times when they would try to scrape, Lamar Jackson would beat them to the edge. Other times, you're trying to defend it all. You're not getting good gap placement, gap filling, and poor tackling, and guys that says, oh no, I'm not tackling that guy. You have what you have happen with some of these runs. 26 carries, 186 yards for Derrick Henry. Just felt like he was running downhill all game. Lamar Jackson added 15 for 81. You couldn't even stop the Mark Andrews quarterback tush push stuff. You couldn't stop The only guy you really had success against was probably Justice Hill on the carries that he had. Heck, even Steven Sims had an end around for 15 yards as well. This was every bit of a 300-yard rushing net day for the Ravens, and would have been had they not knelt down the final play and lost 1 yard in that situation. Embarrassing to give up that kind of rushing yards, even, and especially part of knowing that you did not have Zay Flowers to defend in the passing game, and you could have, you should have been able to at least limit the Ravens more than that.
Just comes down to physicality. Baltimore had it, Pittsburgh didn't. And for a Steelers team that, remember, was supposed to be about getting back to their roots of being physical and building the trenches, up front, offense, defense, all those classic Steelers hallmarks. And they weren't. I mean, Baltimore simply kicked Pittsburgh's butt for the entire game, start to finish. Pittsburgh at times looked half-hearted, disinterested, and Baltimore fed off of that and ran at will. So while this result is all too similar in terms of course, the outcome, the margin of defeat, and even the slow start, you dig yourself a hole, you try to get back into it, all that kind of stuff. This one was a little more unique in the sense of, Pittsburgh's soul was taken in this game by an AFC North rival to cap off this losing streak. But yeah, Pittsburgh's not going to be a physical team, and they certainly weren't. They had no chance, and they had no chance in this one.
No, and look, you couldn't do anything early on offense. You get down 21 to nothing like they were. It takes you out of several components of your game. Not like that you could even expect the running game to do much of anything anyways. But you couldn't do anything on offense until you got into the second half of this thing, and you did fortunately make a couple of start loading up a little bit in the passing game on some explosive plays. How much of that was just the Ravens, just not doing a good job overall, I think Russell Wilson made a couple of nice throws in this game. I thought there was a couple of nice schemes, a whole shot to George Pickens for a touchdown, a nice play design and route by Van Jefferson on a touchdown there. But and really most of those explosive plays came on, I think, a couple of drives there back to back in the second half there. But fact of the matter is, you still look at the scoreboard and you're only able to put 14 points up, even though they tried to provide a little bit of help or hope in the second half of, okay, if you get a stop here, one more score, only down 7 points at that point. But it never was even as close as, really a 14-point game overall. It just wasn't. This team ran the ball just 11 times in total. 3 of those were by Russell Wilson, 8 by the running backs for just 23 yards in total. You look at the passing chart and if you didn't know what happened and were given that passing chart, you'd probably say, okay. But even the passing chart of Russell Wilson doesn't tell the entire story of this one. And just abysmal on offense in the first half. Got a little bit going in the second half. Defense could not hold up their part. You get what you get. This was a 9-8 team or 10-7 team that just got their ass handed to them in the playoffs. Plain and simple.
Yep. On the road by divisional rival to end another season. And yeah, some of the pass plays were impressive and gave Pittsburgh some brief glimmers and moments of hope, but it's all lipstick on a pig for a team that could not win in the trenches, was completely bodied, out-muscled, and again, I hate to use the phrase want it more because that's such a cliche and it can be hard to determine sometimes, but Baltimore simply think wanted this game more and their physicality shined through because of it. All right, Dave, let's go to kind of recap some of the pregame type stuff, also some of the injuries in game. Kim Hayward checked for concussion. He returned. TJ Watt hurt his elbow. He finished out the game. The one Steeler I'm aware of who did not finish out the game was left tackle Dan Moore Jr., who hurt his ankle late in the first half. He was replaced by Calvin Anderson. Tomlin did not offer an update on Moore post game. From a housekeeping standpoint, we thought this game might have some wrinkles in this one day based on some of the pregame moves that Pittsburgh was making. They made a flurry of moves ahead of kickoff, including signing back receiver Scotty Miller to the practice squad, who they'd waived the other day, which made room for Calvin Anderson to be activated off of IR and be a backup and end up finishing out this game. Like I mentioned, they also elevated, in addition to Scotty Miller, Jamal Agnew from the practice squad to the active and active roster. And we thought, okay, maybe they're going to try to do something different, some spark in the return game, maybe something kind of funky here. No, they ended up not dressing either Scotty Miller and Jamal Agnew. Those guys did not dress. So I'm not entirely sure the intent of elevating them in the first place, but they kind of fooled us, Dave.
I started to get a little bit excited there when those because I was not expecting the elevations to happen, and I didn't think it out, and I had a level of excitement there, thinking, all right, what's going on here? Scotty Miller, obviously was waived a couple of days ago. Circle back to the practice squad. You elevate both him and Jamal Agnew when it seems like there's no reason to have elevations there. I thought things started running through my head. Okay, maybe they're going to sit down Cordell Patterson, make him inactive. Maybe they're going to actually sit down Van Jefferson. Let's face it, the kickoff, they did not get the bang for the buck in the kickoff return department from Cordell Patterson. They didn't get their bang for buck from Cordell Patterson as an offensive player. Van Jefferson, we've talked a lot about the empty routes, the snaps that he's played, the low percentage of catches that he's had for amount of snaps that he's played. Even as a minimum salary player, the return was absolutely awful when it comes to Van Jefferson. You even circle back to the game, the end of the season game with Van Jefferson, maybe thinking that contested catch he probably maybe should have had, another catch that he made you should have had, felt like a little bit more yak on that. Mike Tomlin's actually going to do something and shake this roster up with Agnew and Scotty Miller and sit down Cordell Patterson and Van Jefferson. Wrong. Both Scotty Miller and Agnew inactive. The only reason I can think of, Alex, why you elevate two guys like that and then make them inactive in that situation is because you can. And what I mean by that is once the regular season ends, you don't have to worry about players eating into your salary cap as far as game check elevations go. Obviously, if players are on the practice squad, they get one pay during the week, one set of pay during the week. And then if they're elevated for a game, they get a regular game check based on, regular salary and all like that. That impacts your salary cap. After the regular season ends, that's no longer the case with that. So my thinking is it was in case of emergency, let's elevate these two guys. You never know. You get into a pregame situation, somebody pulls a hamstring, twist an ankle. We've got guys up on the active/inactive roster ready to go. That is the only reason I can think of why they did the roster manipulation that way, to have two guys up and then only to make them inactive, if that makes sense.
I get that. That does make sense. And Baltimore had something similar where they elevated a pair of receivers, and one of them, Keith Kirkwood, did not dress. I don't know why you would have two elevated, though, in Agnew and Miller. Miller, I could see maybe, but Agnew, who hasn't been elevated the entire season, as you said, it's sort of, okay, they can, so they will, sort of a thing. But even when we think Pittsburgh has the tiniest idea of a spark and a change, they pull the rug out from under us. But it doesn't matter if Scotty Miller was dressing, if Jamal Agnew was playing, if Swan and Stallworth were out there based on the struggles overall that Pittsburgh had and defensively how poor they were. Baltimore is going to win this game with or without Zay Flowers. Let's dive into this game, Dave. 28-14, Baltimore victory. Pittsburgh ending the season overall 10-7, losing their final five. Just want to read off some of the defensive stats in this one, and each one seems to get more depressing than the next. And obviously, it's a team loss, offense, defense, neither side good enough. But I just think about how bad this defense was completely chewed up and spit out. Baltimore ran for 299 yards as a team. As you said, they briefly hit 300 before the final kneel down. Derrick Henry ran for $186, most yards ever against Pittsburgh in the postseason. Collectively as a team rushing and individually. Derrick Henry breaking the previous mark set by Curtis Martin in 96. The Ravens breaking the team record, which was set by the Raiders in 73. Ravens had 464 yards of total offense, fourth most ever against Pittsburgh in the postseason. They had over 300 by halftime. They would have hit 500 had this game been remotely competitive. Baltimore had 29 first downs, most against Pittsburgh in the playoffs since 2002. Ravens were 10 of 15 on third down, and Baltimore ran 72 plays, had nearly 40 minutes time of possession, basically doubling up what Pittsburgh achieved. So my charting one final time will be a busy man. And so put all those numbers together, you got records, you got near records, you got clear dominance. And this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, it's been supposedly known for stopping the run, and they have been for 50 years, look like the worst version ever last night.
Yeah, there's so much wrong with this team on both sides of the football right now, and the thing that was going to allow you to win this game against the Ravens, I thought, was to keep the score down, get a couple of takeaways, and bury the ball in the red zone a couple times, get a couple of field goals or whatnot. But it all started with the potential of trying to keep the score down, and they obviously couldn't do that. And you're not going to win a lot of games in the NFL, period, if you're scoring 14 points and you're giving up 28 on the other side there. So this look, Alex, we talked before before the season started. Both, I thought this was a 9-8 team. You thought this was a 10-7 team. I did not think they would make the playoffs. You did think they would make the playoffs, but not win a playoff game. You were closer than I am, but we were both super close on this one. This was a 9-8, 10-7 team. Let's face it, top to bottom. And I think that came to roost in the playoffs. If they're going to start competing for anything. Look, both those quarterbacks, other quarterbacks in the AFC North, are not going anywhere. And Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. We'll see what happens with the Bengals at the wide receiver position. Yada yada. I think they would be foolish to let T. Higgins walk. But the fact of the matter is, both those organizations have good quarterbacks, very good quarterbacks. The Steelers aren't there yet. So much has got to change on both sides of the football moving forward if this team is going to get back into the playoffs and finally get over the hump and win a playoff game. However, if that's what your goal is to just win a playoff game, well, you might get there in the next year or two. But nothing right now tells me that this team will make the changes necessary organizational wise to get them in a position where they will compete for the Super Bowl in 2025. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, what do you mean by that when you say the changes necessary organizationally to compete for a Super Bowl? What would that entail?
All of it. Drafting appropriately, making the appropriate ads in free agency. I don't think they have the quarterback. I don't think they can even get themselves in a position this offseason to have a quarterback to put them in a position. People get tired of me talking about the adjusted net yards per attempt stat, but it reigns supreme, folks. I mean, there's no two ways about it. The Steelers had a combined number of 6.2 in 2024. Russell Wilson was 6.39 and Justin Fields was 5.86. Let's face it. That number needs to be at least 6.8 in today's NFL to make somewhat of a legitimate run at a Super Bowl, unless your name is Patrick Mahomes. Plain and simple. Dude, is anybody listening to this show think that this team, with whatever weapons you think they can add, with either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, you think they can get that either one of those quarterbacks to a number of 6.8 in that stat? Objectively, I don't. So the way that this team is probably going to have to decide on either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields and or both. They're going to have to try to build the snot out of the defense again and make it where this is a defense that just cannot be ran on or passed on, period. One that can keep the score down, and then try get back to, try to win more games that way, get into the playoffs, and get the monkey off the back as far as the playoff win, and then try to go further there. That's it. I mean, I just don't know how you're going to solve this quarterback situation and make it Super Bowl contending wise, and really the rest of the offense as well too. Look, I'd love nothing more than for this team to go out and get T. Higgins. Do you really believe that kind of stuff's going to happen during the offseason? I don't. I hope they prove me wrong. But it's going to take some precedent to change there. And then, this defense is going to be another year older. Props to Cam Hayward, single best player probably on this team in 2024. You can make an argument that guy was the MVP of this 2024 team. But no disrespect to Cam Hayward, but the fact that we're talking about the second oldest player on your roster being the MVP of this team, and being a former 2009, what year, 11 draft class member, says a lot about what this team has done from a draft perspective at this point. And Alex, I just don't think they're close to competing for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say in terms of when you mentioned the path to become Super Bowl contenders in 25. I just don't see a path. I know it's raw coming off the loss, but based on, as you said, there is no quarterback savior even theoretically out there for Pittsburgh to attain, let alone actually go get. And given all the other issues, I don't see that. And I used to win a playoff game not as the goal, but as the measure of progress. In Pittsburgh, it's been nothing but stagnation for 8 years, literally. 6 straight playoff losses, one and done each year. With that, they made the playoffs since 2017. That playoff drought is the longest post-merger. The 6 straight playoff losses ties the active record with the Dolphins for most in a row. You guys know all the stats there. Is it so much about trying to still tweak the dials and pull the levers to make this roster better, or is it more cultural? Because the more these things stack up, and you watch this team play last night, look lifeless out of the gate, the lack of pride. I thought they played with defensively with half-hearted efforts and standing around and jogging to the football and not rallying and not always getting hats on the football, watching other guys make tackles. Is it bigger than just add this guy, go sign that guy, draft this position? To me, you start wondering if it's a bigger cultural issue that has to get solved first.
Look, you're not going to do anything without the appropriate roster for starters. But second, I guess you're saying is the message stale?
It can be message, it can be culture. I mean, I think culture is just important as roster. You can have a great collection of talent, which Pittsburgh debatably does, but if you don't have the culture and kind of the foundation of how you're going to build your team, then how good is that talent going to be? It's always going to, at best, underachieve and so at worst fall flat.
I think along with culture, you have to talk about, you can have great culture, I think, but if you don't have talent a certain level of talent, and you're not willing to break. I think culture needs to relate to precedents as well too. This team just has some archaic precedents that it will not, seemingly not break at this time here. I think Mike Tomlin is a master motivator. I think he can get more out of most players than others. However, is he, from a X's and O's schematic organizational game plan development, the best at what he does? Absolutely not. Look, you're gonna go, what is all the talk for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever gonna be? Fire Mike Tomlin. This team should think hard and heavy about divorce of some sort when it comes to that. I certainly get that, and we are another step even closer to really wondering if it is that time. I mean, you could say that time was last season. I think I think I think this team overachieved. For, if you want to be honest about it, I think this team overachieved this year by a game. You
But
would
does that
say
make this collapse any
no,
easier
no,
to
no,
handle? No, I don't
no.
think it
But
does.
I mean, I think he got this team one game further and into the playoffs than where I thought it.
I don't think they overachieved. I think
Uh,
they I don't
I
do
I think they
they
overachieved. It's
they
plain
do
and
what
simple.
they do what they always do. They make the playoffs. They flash in the regular season. They play okay against the division, and then they get bounced. It's what they've always. It's what they've done every single year
All
for
right,
since
but how did this
2017.
team not overachieve when I had, in my eyes, when I had them going 9-8, not making playoffs?
I mean, I think they had in some respects a better roster than last year, a healthier team certainly too. I mean, they look at the way the defense was in tatters last year, and ended up actually having a higher ranked scoring defense last year than they did this season. They had, I still think, better quarterback play overall, despite Wilson and this offense completely fading down the stretch. I mean, I know they beat national expectations and odds makers and your 9-8 record, but I just think overall they're a team and really an organization, because the players have changed so much. Organizationally, they tread water, where this is this new standard of make the playoffs, get bounced in very similar fashions.
For once again, for a team that prefers to build through the draft, you can circle this back to the last several top of the draft classes too. I'm talking when you draft a guy in the first round, this team expects those guys to be more than one contract guys, right?
Yes, and often cornerstone guys too.
Right, and since really T.J. Watt, when has that happened?
Yeah, it hasn't. Yeah, they've missed in those crucial respects, and Broderick Jones not looking like that guy, and obviously got very little info on Fautanu this year.
Right. So for a team that likes to build from through the draft, and not go over the top in free agency, they're in limbo right now. It's a never ending cycle right now with this team.
Yeah, it's purgatory. But I just wonder, and talent certainly a component. You have to have both to be a Super Bowl contending team. You have to have culture and talent. Pittsburgh's lacking talent, but I think they're lacking some culture too. I don't think you can lose 5 straight games. I don't think you can get beat up the way that Baltimore beat you up in a style of game you knew they were going to play. If we can talk about how familiar these opponents are, and they are, and yet if you're going to get beat up like that, that just tells you how much worse off you are talent wise for sure, but also I think culturally too, and identity. I mean, it's all those things. What is the identity of the Pittsburgh Steelers, offensively, defensively, right now? They're a rudderless ship.
Right. And okay. So and I get where people are saying it's time to divorce and move on from Mike Tomlin. I get that at this point.
Do you agree? Is the better question. We can all understand the case against Tomlin. Do you endorse? Do you agree?
I think it's something that needs to be looked at, and especially if this goes on one more season, which it's likely to do. I just told you that I don't think that this team is going to be in position to win a Super Bowl next season. All right.
Sure.
Even if you get to a spot where you win one playoff game but get bounced in the second one next year, we're going to be back to the same conversation again.
Sure, but there at least would be a tangible step of progress. Not the goal, but I mean, winning a playoff game at this point.
Well, it seems monumental at this point. Yeah.
Which again talks about lowering of the standards. That's now kind of the big sea change. But that is what. How do we define a successful season this year? Before the year began, Dave, it was twofold. And I plan on writing about this. It was finding your quarterback for 2025 and hopefully beyond, and win a playoff game. And they're 0 for 2.
Right. I mean, we both said that's how you're going to define a successful season, especially with the way this roster was built. At any point, did you think that ahead of the season that this was a Super Bowl caliber team? No.
Ahead of the season, no. Of course, there was that buzz mid-season, which I didn't entertain probably as much as others. But obviously, at one point, you felt like there were some pieces there: top 10 scoring offense, top 5 scoring defense. You do those two things with great special teams. You can make a run, but obviously that didn't last long.
Here's the thing. Okay, if you change if you did something with Mike Tomlin this offseason, got a new head coach in there, what would your expectations be? Even if you could handpick the coach that you wanted, what would your expectations be? Would it change what you, and if you did not change some of the other things that go along with it, as far as precedents of how the team approaches building through the draft and not going over the top in free agency, all those other things. And really the only thing that you change is you're bringing in a different coach, different coaching staff, obviously, along with that. What would your expectations be, knowing that the shape of what the roster is in right now, the questions that they have at quarterback, obviously going into this offseason, what would your expectations be for the 2025 season? And I would let you handpick the coach that you want to go forward with in that situation, but that's really the only thing you can change. You'd have to keep in line the other organizational aspects of this of what they do.
Yeah, I don't know what it would be. It wouldn't be Super Bowl contender, no matter who the handpicked quote unquote hire would be. But the question was, could Pittsburgh rebuild or refine or have a different culture identity? I mean, that's kind of what I'm just asking. Like this, Tomlin gets lauded for creating culture, but based on the results, especially this year, how good is that culture really?
It's not good enough.
Yeah, and I think it's actively negative just based on how this season has ended and how they played this game. I mean, the one thing Pittsburgh can hang their hat on typically is having some pride defensively and stopping the run and being physical. And you see that with guys like Cam Hayward and Landon Roberts. It's not the entire team, but you have some big issues where guys just aren't getting up for these type of moments where you shouldn't even need motivated to get up for. It should just be obvious. Pittsburgh's missing that mark.
Look, we can sit here and I understand why we're having this conversation, and boy, I bet the listeners are loving it. Man, yeah, get on it. Entertain the fact of moving on from Mike Tomlin. People could go out right now and start a big campaign and scream real loud and go buy billboards around the city, fire Mike Tomlin, all like that. The fact of the matter is that at some point we're going to have to move past the idea that that's very unlikely to happen. I mean, it's not a reason not to talk about it and have discussions about it. because that's what fans do. That's what bloggers do. That's what analysts do. That's what media people do. They talk about this kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, we can entertain it all day long and say, yeah, you know what? They should probably Art Rooney II should really consider whether it be, asking Mike Tomlin if he wants to be traded somewhere, flat out firing him, what have you. Sure, we can entertain it, but it all sells an episode of a podcast and looks good in a post 24 hours after the season ends, 48 hours, 72 hours, even 3 weeks after a season ends. But the fact of the matter is we're going to have to move forward with this more than likely with Mike Tomlin as the head coach. And then, where do you go from there?
Yeah, no, that's fair. That is accurate. As much as we'll spend some time discussing it, and the media will talk about Tomlin's future and debate and discuss, highly likely to be the Steelers coach in 2025, coming off that extension he signed this past offseason. But the question is, if you're Art Rooney, what is the case for Mike Tomlin? What has Mike Tomlin done to deserve these continued opportunities?
Sure, and it's worthy to have those conversations right now. Should the Steelers consider post Mike Tomlin a post Mike Tomlin future immediately? The answer to that question is yes. Okay, we've got that out there, but hooray! you know what I'm saying?
No, I do, but I mean, even just again, if you're Art Rooney, how do you justify? What do you say? What is the rationale to sit there and think, okay, Tomlin deserves another chance to turn this around? I'm not saying there isn't a case, but someone has to articulate that case.
Oh, you're going to say the same thing again that he said last year. We've got, the question is when will Art Rooney get sick and tired of being sick and tired?
Right. And he seemed to show some of those signs this past year. I think that's why Pittsburgh was aggressive in overturning the quarterback situation and bringing in Russ, and trading for Fields was partially a consequence of Kenny Pickett wanting out, but making those moves and really going all in on the offensive line to try to get some different results, signing Patrick Queen as the highest paid outside free agent. That was breaking some precedent that you spoke about earlier. And yet, to me, what the issue is, no matter what changes Pittsburgh seems to make, I mean, they have had a lot of changes, roster, scouting, GM in 22 replacing Kevin Colbert after he, retired. The results have been the same. No matter what dials they turn and buttons they push, the results are the same about a team that plays slightly above 500 football and gets one and done in the postseason if they get that far. That's been the story of 8 years now.
If you were brought in as an outside advisor, all right, right now, Art Rooney hired you from the outside and said, Alex, I want an objective course for this offseason. What would you tell them?
Again, I think you have to look at objective course of the season. I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Objective course of the offseason of moving forward.
Okay.
Everything's on the table here, Alex. What plan of action should we have?
Well, like I said, there's an element, obviously, of change this guy and sign this guy and focus on this position, et cetera. But I think, again, it may have to get more granular than that when you look at culture, identity. Like, who do we want to be? Are we that kind of team? How do we get there? How do we instill those values? What does that look like? Not just in the game day product, but the work week and behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff. The people we want, not just the players we want. That all has to match. And I think it can be hard to tell from the outside, obviously, but there's a mismatching of that. Again, Pittsburgh has really lacked that identity, that vision. It felt like they were taking some steps to try to work towards that with going all in on the O-line in the draft, the Arthur Smith hire, and yet they just can't get that plan to come together where vision and culture and personnel and product all get on the same page. There are always some wires crossed there. So I think you really have to look deeper than just the surface level of go sign this flashy free agent and look beyond that to sit there and say, there's some organizational type of issues. So I would look at Rudy and say, you got to look at yourself and how this organization is being run, because it's not being run the way a Steelers team should be run.
Well, that goes back to what I said earlier, in this show and what I've screamed about for a while now. There's so many precedents, archaic precedents at this, that they use that really need to be looked at. I mean, even things down to, like we've talked about several times, when it comes to undrafted free agents and signing bonuses and things. I mean, if you're going to look at things, you look at everything.
Sure, but it's less about, because I think you're referring to things like they haven't signed an outside receiver to a big money contract like a T. Higgins. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. I'm talking about deeper level type of core value things, the people we want, how we go about our business, more so than some of those structural types of things, if that makes sense.
Okay, so less choir boys, more guys that need managing and coaching, or I mean, where are you going with that?
I mean, you need, just to give an example, like guys like a Landon Roberts is what your defense should be built around. Really hard edge, prideful kind of guys. They're going to be physical. They're going to bring it. They're going to be consistent. They're not going to back down. Obviously the Cam Haywards of the world, the Deshaun Elliott's of the world, those types of guys. I think when you build out this defense, which we've seen this defense really fall apart, seen this run defense really struggle, and you're going to play in an AFC North. It's going to be featuring this Ravens run game still for the foreseeable future. You need to have guys that have that edge across the board, not just even with your front seven, but your cornerbacks, for example. Like, it's got to be a team representative type of a thing. I don't want to see Larry Ogunjobi playing two-hand tag on Lamar Jackson, which he did in a snap last night. So I think defensively, when you talk about the culture, to get more specific, that's where it has to start. You got to get some real kind of goons out there that are going to play that Steelers way.
All right, so I mean, then that's more than just Tomlin.
Yes. I'm not saying it's just Tomlin, but of course your head coach is the one who instills culture, and the attitude of this team gets reflected in that.
Right, but you can coach and teach, someone to be one way, but if that guy doesn't have a minute to become that, someone's got to want to become that.
Well, that's you have to find that. Yeah, to identify that in your scouting. It's not just about how fast does this guy run, or how good of a cover guy is he. It's about the personality, the makeup. Yeah, because if you're trying to turn guys into something they aren't, then you're doomed. That's kind of the point I'm trying to make, is that's the cultural issue, where you can't get too wrapped up in just the X's and O's and the schematics and the scouting report, but look at the actual dude. And is that kind of a guy you want in a foxhole when things get tight? Because when things get tight, Pittsburgh falls apart.
All right. I mean, we're talking in circles here. I mean, but I get where you're coming from here, but the fact we can have the conversation. Should the Steelers consider post Mike Tomlin life? Yes. But once again, we can sit here all day and have that discussion, but nothing's going to happen.
Well, it's even with Mike Tomlin. It's with or without Mike Tomlin. I think you still examine that culturally and say, how do we improve upon that, and really have an identity of who we're going to be offensively, defensively, and what does that mean from a personnel standpoint, a people standpoint. You have to build out that framework. So I think it's a conversation to have, even assuming, and it's very likely to be the case, that Tomlin stays.
Okay. I mean, I don't know where else you want to go with this.
No, I mean, that's probably as far as to take it right now. But talking about just this game in particular, to kind of get back to the here and now, talked about maybe you give Lamar more latitude in this game to run, and you focus on Derrick Henry. And there certainly was a lot of emphasis on trying to take away the back and forcing the keep instead of the give. And Lamar happily did that, but you did nothing to slow down Derrick Henry anyway. So even the idea of, okay, pay more attention to Henry comes at the expense of Lamar didn't work out, because Henry ran for $186 and 2 touchdowns and 7 yards per carry on you. And so, none of the whatever plan Pittsburgh had for the run game, which seemed poor, never worked.
How surprised were you Corey Trice Jr. didn't dress?
I don't know if I was terribly shocked when the cornerbacks have been healthy and Dante Jackson was healthy in this game. Trice has been down. I thought, there's a time to do something different and be in a game like this, or again, maybe you set up Beanie Bishop and you have Trice match up on some of these big tight ends. I mean, Cam Sutton was terrible in this game, terrible all season, but when he's getting matched up on Isaiah Likely, you kind of get what you get on that. That's a moment where you sit there and say, be a Trice, can match up on that guy better than a 5'10" Cam Sutton can.
Look, he's been awful in man coverage all season, plain and simple.
This is at Washington. It's the first Washington game.
Yeah, Washington game for sure. I was a bit was not having Corey Trice Jr. on the field the reason why this team got run on for 300 yards in this? Absolutely not. You know what? It would have been a lot more fun to have this conversation this morning had Mike Tomlin dressed James Agnew and sat Van Jefferson and dressed sat Cordell Patterson, even though the outcome wasn't going to, looking back on it all, it would have been a lot more fun of thinking, shit, at least they did something different there, dress.
And that's what Tomlin talked about. He's like, we're going to make some changes.
Right. Dress Corey Trice Jr., sit down Cameron Sutton, who offers you absolutely nothing on special teams, really on top of it all. Yeah, I mean, if you want to get into, that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about, Dave, of going with the status quo, talking one thing. We're going to change this. We're going to get Mike Williams more work. And Mike Williams plays not how many snaps? 9 snaps, 11 snaps. What did I even write this morning here?
Yeah, I'm not even sure.
Let me.
I mean, they didn't run a lot of snaps in general. I don't know the percentages, but yeah, there was
9
no big
snaps,
teaching.
20% of the. Oh yeah, we're gonna get. And he said this all season. It's reasonable to what did he say? Reasonable to expect. However he phrased it there, 9 snaps, and it was only what's 20% of 40 whatever
45,
snaps. But I mean, you can't tell me. And look,
Jefferson, I agree.
Van Jefferson was a great route he ran, great touchdown in that one. But on a down per down basis, you wrote about this. Look, let's face it, the offensive skill positions was not built good enough. Especially at the wide receiver position, what we said right from the get-go this year. The offensive line, for what they have invested once again in draft picks and the continuity that they had throughout the season, obviously did not have Mason McCormick for this game as well too. It felt like whoever you want to put it on, Mike Tomlin, Pat Meyer, everybody, whatever. It wasn't good enough. The run game was not good enough, or what it should have been for at least the guys you have up front and the running backs that you had back there. Why was it Jaylen Warren, given more opportunity, period, throughout the season here? I mean, and obviously that starts with the head coach. You can even probably circle back to the decision that Mike Tomlin made to move forward with Russell Wilson and all that kind of talk at the time of thinking, is Arthur Smith a Justin Fields fan? If Arthur Smith had his way, would Justin Fields had remained the starting quarterback moving forward? That's all fine and good. How much would the end result have changed? Period. Do you win one more game? Maybe you're hosting a playoff wild card game to get your ass blown out by, as opposed to playing on the road. We'll obviously never know. I mean, if you want to circle it down, the head coach, how much say do you think Mike Tomlin has in signings with the team and 53-man roster construction?
Tons of it. I mean, almost as much as any head coach in football. I mean, they always present these things as collaborations and Steelers decisions, especially when it comes to the draft. But Tomlin's the longest tenured coach in football, with a head GM who doesn't have that tried and true scouting background that personnel background that Tomlin has, that Kevin Colbert had. And so, yeah, Tomlin has a huge say. That's why I laugh at some of these comments. I think Rex Ryan talking today about, well, they don't have the quarterback and they overachieved and they didn't have the roster. I mean, Tomlin's the head coach. He helps build out every piece of the roster. He goes recruit these free agents. And so Tomlin has a heavy hand in what this roster looks like, and he bears responsibility for it.
I do believe that they overachieved with the roster that they built.
Okay, I mean, yeah,
but it's a catch-22. Look, if you're willing to put yourself, if you're willing to put yourself in a position to say Mike Tomlin's part of the problem, you need to move on from that. Then you are in the same breath, you need to across the board swap it out up front. That means Omar Khan. That means Andy Weidel. You need to clean slate it then, and you bring in a whole new front office, a whole new coaching staff at the same time. That's my belief. It's not. I believe that you're spinning your wheels if you leave the executive side intact and you only change the head coaching side.
Should they do that?
If you're gonna consider doing it at all, then you need to consider all of it. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And if you're going to consider any of it, you need to consider all of it.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I think if you're Tomlin working under the assumption he returns, the question is, okay, how does this change? Like, how, it's been literally the same with the margins being just a little different shade, good or bad, depending on the year-to-year flow of things. How does this thing actually change? And that's got to be a hard conversation that gets had between head coach and ownership.
But in the same breath, if you're Art Rooney, you're going to make those changes. You've got to let those guys do what they do as far as their beliefs as well too. You can't put limits as far as okay, but the whole guaranteed money thing's staying intact here. The whole player incentive aspect. Do you think that's just because the way the organization's done it, or do you think that stems from directives from Art Rooney?
No, I think it's both. I think when you talk about the way they've done it, that's an ownership tradition type of thing, and so I don't know if it's it's probably unspoken.
Then Rooney's got to be willing to change as well too.
Yes, I agree. I think when you examine again culture identity, you have to ask yourself, why are we doing X, Y, and Z? And if the answer is, well, we've always done that, that's not good enough. That's not even good enough, even if it's working. Like, if you don't have tangible, actual, actionable reasons for doing something, and this is the benefit of why we do it, then that's just bad culture in general. And that's why I guess it goes back to the culture idea of, if your culture is, this is the way we've done things, this is status quo, this is why we're steady, that's where culture goes to die.
I think I think in addition to talking about culture, you just can't use that as an end-all, do-all word. You got to use culture and precedent.
Yeah, I mean, precedent is part of your culture. Those things, I think, are intertwined in terms of what is your history, what do you do, what have you done? Those things help make up culture, certainly.
All right, once again, I mean, we can have this conversation and please 80% of the people by having these conversations, but the fact of the matter is, where are we going to be come Senior Bowl time?
Well, like I said, even if Tomlin stays, aren't these questions still worth examining, no matter what the coaching decisions are, right? I think they have to be worth examining.
Sure, but at some point, we're going to have to move on with the point that, what is this team going to be in 2025, and what's going to change if you do leave in Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin?
Yeah, when you talk about, okay, when you evaluate the Senior Bowl guys, you talk about, okay, who's going to fit our culture? That's still ongoing in terms of, okay, who are the dudes that you're going to trust when, like I said, the road gets narrow, things get tight, that aren't going to, be a shrinking violet, aren't going to turn away from the fight. Because I think you're seeing some of that in Pittsburgh, at least starting with the defense, and that's that's the lens in which you scout, it's the lens in which you sign, it's the lens in which you evaluate. What is our identity like? What is the identity of the Pittsburgh Steelers defense right now, Dave?
It's even gone backwards. It got some takeaways throughout the first 3 quarters of the season, then those seem to go away when you play better teams. And then obviously the sack totals were nowhere close to what this unit. I mean, look, you go back through the the most recent Super Bowl successes, and even making the Super Bowl and losing to the Green Bay Packers. What this team had, it had a quarterback that could, do pretty much damn near anything for you. Ben being Ben, he was a unique quarterback, Hall of Fame quarterback, a guy that almost regardless who you put around could have success with. They do not have a franchise quarterback right now, for starters. Second, defenses that were just out of this world. You look back at the 2000 what was 2000, even the eight unit unit, and just how nobody could run on that unit, and the adjusted net yards per pass, they were just mauling people. They have a few players that kind of fit that, but they don't have a complete, they don't have the James Ferrier, but also balls changed too. And they have not progressed with how the game has progressed on the defensive side of football. They don't have that. And also too, I mean, you look at that team was built with a lot of higher draft picks that stuck around as well too, right? Back in the day, but you don't have the James Harrisons anymore. You don't have the Foots, the Ferriers, the Troy Polamalos, the Ryan Clarks. You don't have that type of unit right now.
Yeah, I mean, I asked the identity, and it's hard to give an answer. That's why I kind of go all over the place and relive the glory days. But they really are losing and lacking their identity defensively, which is super alarming because they've had that much more intact than they've had an offensive identity. But I think in terms of what they need to be and aspire to be, it's playing hard, it's stopping the run, it's earning the right to rush the passer, it's creating takeaways off of that. Like, that's been the framework whenever Pittsburgh has had those defenses. Play hard, physical, stop the run, pressure the quarterback, create turnovers off of that because you're putting them in third long situations. So when you look at this defense, if guys don't fit that box, if you're not doing things to improve that, are you a tough player? Are you physical? Can you play the run? And that goes for all positions, not just front seven. That goes for corners and safeties too. Then if you can't do that, then I don't want you. And so that's where Pittsburgh has to get back to the identity defensively.
Well, here's the thing. But when we went into this season, we said, all right, if this team's going to win share of games and finally get over the hump and win a playoff game, a huge measuring stick even before. I mean, roll back to what we said. A success. The bar was set so low heading into this season that all you were hoping for, or what we were hoping for, was come out of the season with an answer at quarterback, a true answer at quarterback, and the defense playing well enough to get this team in shape. To
playoff win,
a no matter how you go. Win.
Yeah,
right. The defense underperformed, plain and simple. When you look at it, the defense underperformed.
Yeah, they did, obviously. Yep.
Especially in the final four games.
Yeah, I mean, the run defense fell apart, and the physicality waned, the communication issues, which they seem to solve some of those communication issues these last two games. But the physicality just is not there. So that's what it's got to get back to, I think, in terms of the start for this defense. Is if you're not a physical, sacrifice your body, lay it all on the line type of dude, then I don't want you. And I know that may come at costs otherwise, where you may not take as talented a player. It's in some overall grander scheme, may not take someone who's as fast, as good of a coverage guy, whatever the case is. But if you can't get back to base, which is being physical and stopping the run, then you can't play in Pittsburgh. That has to be the mentality through every touchstone of this offseason in terms of how you reevaluate and rebuild and retool and reshape this roster.
Okay.
That's where it starts to me defensively. Because again, you just watch this game, you watch Pittsburgh get beat up. They can't get off blocks. They're not rallying to the football like they should. They look defeated, Dave. I mean, they're waving a white flag. It felt like early in this game when this thing, is not really over quite yet. And these are things that Pittsburgh Steelers defenses just have not done and cannot continue to do.
Okay.
Anything else here defensively, Dave, when you look at this game about why Pittsburgh struggled so much? I mean, in the past game, Dante Jackson getting beat for a touchdown by Bateman on that 3rd and 13. So many situations where Pittsburgh, had the Ravens backed up. I think one of the ones that really sums it up. It's 21-7. Pittsburgh has just scored. Baltimore gets the ball back. Alex Highsmith sacks Lamar Jackson on 1st down. It's 2nd and 20. I feel like, okay, you get these guys off the field, get decent field position, 21-7. Still got, I think, midway through the 3rd quarter. We get some time here. And then Jackson rolls out, hits Tylan Wells for a 21-yard gain. They convert on 2nd and 20. Another play where Minka's jogging and Dante Jackson's watching, and it's just too easy there for Baltimore. That type of stuff just drives you crazy.
Look, when and Mike Tomlin talked about this after the game, when it looked like you had him in unfavorable situations, Lamar Jackson, made the plays. I mean, there's several instances in 3rd and long situations here. I think especially in that drive after the Steelers scored their first touchdown, right? That they let them make those made plays where they should have been off the field in those situations.
Yeah, that's a great example of it. They go on a touchdown drive, I think, on that one, to make it 28-7. The Bateman came on a 3rd and 13 or 3rd and long situation, that score there. And so moments where you could have gotten stops, gotten off the field. I don't think Pittsburgh wins, but changes the complexion some. The Justice Hill touchdown. I thought the interior rush was really, and I'm sorry, I'm suppressing a cough here, but I thought the interior rush was poor in this one. Lamar, so many chances to step up, climb the pocket. The Hill touchdown, a great example of that.
Yeah, you're starting to lose your voice here. I can hear it. Here's the thing. Coming out of this season, and assuming that they don't make changes with Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, yada yada, you better pull up all that film on the Bengals and the Ravens, and you better have some prayer meetings of what we need to do to not only compete, but but more than handle those two offenses to start with.
They're different offenses though, which is the tough part.
Right. But you better have answers to that, because you're going to be like I said at the top of the show, you're going to be dealing with that way beyond just next season here, and you better start making plans of how you're going to solve the franchise quarterback situation on your own end. But until you're able to answer that franchise quarterback situation, which is unlikely to happen this in 2025, you better figure out everything that you need to do to keep scores down in games to give your below average quarterback situation a chance to win those games, and not only just in the regular season, but in the playoffs against the better teams as well. I mean, the whole offseason needs to be centered around looking at the Ravens, because it all starts within in the division, right? And if you cannot beat those teams, and look, the Bengals were the Bengals. Their own defense is the reason that they stayed at home in the playoffs. It would have been interesting had the Bengals even made the playoffs. They probably would have put up a bigger fight than what the Steelers did in this game. But you better look hard and long at what those two teams in the division have done and are about to do, and everything ought to be centered around defending those two teams' offenses to at least give your offense a chance to hang in games.
I'm just spitballing, but I wonder if the theory is, do you double down and just go all in on boosting this defense and sit there and say, yeah, the offense is just going to be mediocre for the foreseeable future until we find that franchise quarterback guy, until we kind of stumble into that. So let's just load up on defense, and that's how we're going to counter Baltimore and Cincinnati, by just having the best rock star defense we can put together.
People ain't going to like to hear this, but that was my thoughts even going on into this game. Was, don't be shocked if this team continues to load up on defense, and that's where a lot of your money and investments are made this offseason, because I don't think they, and once again, sign me up for insert wide receiver X or whatever you want. T. Higgins, sign me up for that all day long. I'm just not convinced that the team is going to go down that path of making T. Higgins the top 4 highest paid wide receiver in the NFL, guaranteed, and 2 or 3 years worth of guaranteed money to help solve that. So the course of action, people aren't going to like to hear it, but if indeed they're not going to solve the quarterback situation this offseason, and they're not going to go out and get a guy like T. Higgins, then I think you have no choice but to try to make the defense as stellar as humanly possible during this offseason, until you can get yourself in a position where you can go out and start surrounding a franchise quarterback with better players.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm 100% all in, but I can certainly see the merit, especially like I said, because the Ravens offense and the Bengals offense are two different styles. If both were just super run heavy offenses, then maybe you just focus on the front, be a little lax in the secondary, and spend some more resources offensively. But the Bengals are an aerial attack. The Ravens went in different ways, but they certainly are a ground and pound type of team. And so it's hard to, you feel like you have to invest in everything defensively if you really want to be able to stop both of those teams the way that you need to. I think it's probably more so focused on the front seven and stopping the run. I think Pittsburgh can manage the pass game better. You just look at the way they contain the Bengals versus the way they are unable to contain the Ravens ground game. But yeah, maybe that's the idea. I know it won't please the Colin Cowards of the world, but maybe Pittsburgh just goes back and says, let's try to build this thing like, 2022, I don't know, 2019, and have this just amazing, unstoppable defense.
Here's the thing on top of it, though. You got to decide, is Arthur Smith the guy and the offense that you want to move forward with whatever one of these two or both quarterbacks that you're going to bring back? Okay. And if that's the case, are you going to run multiple tight ends again? If that's the case, then you probably need to go out and I don't even know if he's going to be there. The Penn State tight end,
Warren.
Warren, the Michael Pruitts, the Connor Haywards. You need, if you're going to be a 2-3 tight end unit, you need to have pass weapons. Those guys need to be pass weapons in addition to solid blockers there. They want to become the Philadelphia Eagles on as far as the running game goes. They're not close to that. Do you need to go back in and maybe spend some more draft picks on offensive linemen, or because you got to really ask yourself, are those two tackles going to be the answer for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, you go back to, let's focus in on doing a couple things really well instead of trying to do a little bit of everything. Because Pittsburgh feels like they want to do a little bit of here, a little bit there. There's some pieces, but there's no collectiveness. There's no cohesion, and you just kind of get this scattered mess of another one and done season.
How many teams in the NFL would Van Jefferson and Michael Pruitt log the number of snaps that they logged in, and even throw in Connor Hayward how many teams in the NFL would those three guys log the amount of snaps that they logged for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year?
Yeah, just about this one only.
Honestly,
yeah, not even just from a talent but identity standpoint, a team that wants to employ all these tight ends and value the run blocking. I mean, yeah, it's just. And then it goes back to, okay, do you keep Justin Fields instead of Russell Wilson and say, let's just have a really good rushing attack with a quarterback that can be multiple in that respect and just be like, yeah, just true ground and pound offensively, or we're going to try to grit our way to 17-14 victories.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be willing to accept with Justin Fields that you're at probably at best you're going to have an adjusted net yards passing attempt number of around 6.2. All right, but you need to have the confidence in that you can run the football at will, and then play off of the athleticism and the things that he can do, and the bells and whistles that come along with an extremely mobile quarterback. If that's the way that then you've got to go all in on that aspect of it, with him, and say, hey, but at the same time, build your defense up where nobody can really score on it, because you're going to get what you're going to get on the offensive side. That feels like the ceiling, and you better damn sure do those things well, like running the football, and then build off the mobility of Justin Fields, because you damn sure are not going to get it on a look. You talk about Lamar Jackson, and yeah, they beat the Steelers with a run game and all. That son of a gun still had a 9 point something adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat number. When asked to win games with his arm, he still did it.
Yeah, and is capable of doing it whenever called upon.
Is Justin Fields going to be that guy that can deliver you that in those instances? And the answer, in my opinion, is no. So you've got to be all in on running the football and playing off of his athleticism once again, and maximizing that to the best of your ability, whatever that looks like. And it might be a 6.2 adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat. But if you're running the football well, scoring down on the low red zone, moving the chains, yada, yada. I mean, look, I hate to bring up Patrick Mahomes and all this, but I mean, he's pound for pound from a passing stat perspective, he's not having a great season. But the fact of the matter is what Patrick Mahomes does and can do in key situations, specifically on third downs, is why they move the chains, right? And that's why they're able to get away with it. And also, they've got a good defense,
and great coaching,
and great coaching on top. They got an innovative. They're willing to adapt and change throughout a season with things that they do schematically on offense throughout the season there. But I mean, back to the core of the issue. Assuming you stand pat with Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan. You're asking me, do I think that the plan of action should be to continue to invest in the defense? Yeah, I think they should. If the core of action is going to be stick with Russell Wilson, or Justin Fields, and or both those guys.
Yeah, I know we're so early here in the offseason thoughts, and there are no easy answers. There's no just do this and you're a contender, obviously. Otherwise, we'd be going down that path and feel a lot closer to it. But that's kind of my initial inclination is you just build up on defense. You bring back Fields. That's the quarterback you re-sign to 2-year deal for relatively cheap money, and build up your run game, get better on 1st and 10, get back to a physical style defense, and go back to winning those slop fests, because Pittsburgh can win a slop fest when those games do occur.
Look, if Art Rooney over the course of the next week sits there and tells himself, you know what, there is no way in hell we can try to sell to the masses that every year we strive to be a Super Bowl winning team. But if at your heart of hearts you're looking at the top to bottom, the roster, and everything, and you can honestly tell yourself it ain't going to happen, then there's never been a better opportunity to make sweeping change organizationally.
That's true. Yeah, I mean that's the alternative. That's the other suggestion is the blow it up theory, and you get to talk about brass tacks of exactly what that means in terms
because
of players.
You could be back in this same, and more likely you're going to be back in this same. We're going to, whatever it looks like. Even if you get 2 playoff wins next year, the fact of the matter is you did not win a Super Bowl, and you probably overachieved to get to the point where you won 2 playoff games. So if your heart of hearts know that all right, what is the way this current roster looks right now, heading into this offseason, what we predict, and looking at the quarterback class and looking at free agent quarterbacks and all like that, if in your heart of hearts you're thinking the ceiling is 2 playoff wins, and that's being gracious, then there's never been a better opportunity to make sweeping changes, because you're going to at best be in, and maybe you have to suffer through a 6-11 and get a high draft pick, and maybe the quarterback, yada yada. But I mean, there has never been a better time to have the conversations that this whole show we've talked in circles about.
Yeah, because at some point this defense will get too old and move on and collapse. The thing that's helped Pittsburgh be a sub or just above 500 type of team is this defense, and that can only sustain for so long. Maybe it's finally showing those cracks that they're no longer gonna be that consistent caliber of group. So yeah, there's some movie reference I'm trying to get in my head right now to act out your thought there from Boiler Room when Jeremy Irons asks Kevin Spacey when they realize the crash is coming, the stock market's about to all fall apart, the house of cards, and he says, what do we do? And he says, sell it all, something like that. I'm poorly phrasing this, but do it quickly. So I don't know. I mean, my theory, like I said, is not an ideal one, but if you want to talk about Pittsburgh trying to retool and reload, then that's the identity in which you go. Otherwise, you do go and blow it up. And Pittsburgh has, to their credit in some sense, been able to avoid the pitfalls of teams that lose franchise quarterbacks where they bottom out and have a 3-win season and you start anew. Pittsburgh's never, dipped to that point, but the consequence to that is maybe it's not allowed them to really hit a hard reset and truly, start over from scratch.
Here's the thing that I can't help but think about sometimes too, when you roll back to 2004, and I believe this to be true, and we've heard Kevin Colbert talk about this as well too. When they drafted Ben Roethlisberger, the thought was that his rookie season that he would be the number 3 quarterback, and not have to play. And obviously injuries to Tommy Maddox and Charlie Batch and all changed the course of things, and lo and behold, oh my God, look what we have here. But imagine imagine how that at least that 2004 season, you would have delayed the progression of Ben Roethlisberger by a year, and then sometimes timing is everything, right? When it comes to some of these things. But here's one other thing that I wanted to hit on before we got out of here. And this is just an overall mantra that you've heard me just talk to you about, just in life and in everything. Everything has a beginning. Everything has an end. Every coach has a first day at work. Every coach has a last day at work. Every player has a first day of their NFL career. Every player has a last day of their NFL career. It's the circle. Everything has a beginning. Everything has an end, right? So at some point, there will be a last day for Mike Tomlin, right?
Yes, he's not immortal. Yes, he will. Right. Beginning and an end. Yes.
Right. So, so once again, we get back to where we started from at the start of this show. Should Art Rooney consider post Mike Tomlin life immediately? The answer is yes. But within that, I think that if you do make that decision, then you need to think about changing the journey. You need to make sweeping changes within that, and in your head of what your vision looks like moving forward, you need to get that in place right now. But will they do it? I think we both don't think that's going to happen.
Right. And if you did make that change, it's going to happen like today, because you got head coaches searches around the league being pretty heavy right now. You already have one hire, and Mike Vrabel going to the Patriots. So that's one guy off the board. If you want to entertain a Ben Johnson, you better make that better open up that Pittsburgh job quick to make it real attractive and make sure, hey, Ben, talk to us first before you go signing contracts with other teams, which I know he's not going to probably do here anytime super soon. But you want to make sure that, because hypothetically, if Pittsburgh's job came open, it's easily the most attractive.
Sure.
Even with all the roster issues, but just when you look at other teams, look at the Rooney family stability, a place where a head coach can go and feel safe for a while. That alone makes it attractive. I know Pittsburgh has a whole lot of issues they got to solve roster wise, but that would intrigue any potential head coach. Would give Pittsburgh probably their pick of anyone that they would want to go higher.
Right. And, it's attractive from the sheer fact that you're pretty sure you have some job security for a little while.
Yeah, there's still this mystique, right or wrong, around Pittsburgh about this is the place the coaches want to go coach at.
Right.
Because job security is so fleeting across really all sports.
Right.
I just want to mention some more things defensively from this game. TJ Watt, super, super quiet. I know he had the elbow injury, but I mean, he had moments where Lamar's got 5-6 seconds. That Hill touchdown, a great example of it. In the pocket, the edge guys can't win. The interior rush can't get home. There's no collapse of the pocket. But TJ Watt, 4 straight games without a sack. I know the one was taken off the board against the Bengals, and I was dealing with stuff. But he's facing a rookie in Roger Rosengarten, who's had a fine season. Got moved in there, I think, mid-year. But TJ Watt, your stars didn't play like stars in this game, and Watt had a really disappointing end. And he's not going to win DPOY, nor should he win DPOY. But yeah, to have your edge guys be super quiet, Lamar sacked only once, barely hit in this game, was really disappointing.
We don't have many run plays to look at.
Yeah, Jalen Warren only. Could you give him more run in this offense here? Literally 2 carries, but 6 touches overall, a couple of checkdowns. They talk about burning the boats in this game. I think they had a sparkler in this game, Dave, in terms of what looked different, felt different. They did come out throwing. I mean, that was a different strategy. First play of the game, they spread things out. Freiermuth drops the ball, 2nd down. They had Washington in the slot for 9.5. They bring Fields in on 3rd down, but by and large, it was more of the same.
What's the stat now on first quarter in the playoffs with this team?
Last 6 playoff games, Pittsburgh's been outscored 73-0 in the first quarter. All, of course, losses.
All right. And what did Mike Tomlin say about fast starts throughout the season?
They don't define us.
All right. So maybe if you're going to make a change at head coach and organizational culture, I think that's the first question. If I'm Art Rooney, I'm asking everybody, what do you think about fast starts?
No. Again, even assuming Tomlin stays, that's something where if you're Rooney, said we got to change this approach. We got to be able to preach about fast starts, and how does that get reflected? It can be in a variety of ways, but I think in how you practice. Maybe they don't open up in 7 shots in training camp anymore. Maybe they open up in 1st and 10. I don't know. I mean, but yeah, the slow starts. In this game they were outscored 47-3 in the first quarter. Their last 5 games. Pittsburgh has not and will not have led a game since December 8th at any point. I mean, it's just completely uncompetitive football, playing from behind, never getting a lead, never getting to play your style of game. And that's how you get a 5-game losing streak.
And, once again, 3 first quarter touchdowns right all season, 0 opening possession touchdowns. That's something that definitely, because we're gonna unfortunately be talking about that streak at the start of the 2025 season. On top of it, you can't go another 3, 4, 5 games without I think just in general, you better not go more than 5 or 6 games or something like that happen. I can understand it happening 2, 3, 4 games, maybe sometimes in a row. But on top of it, if you're not going to have those opening drive possessions, you need to be talking about more than 3 first quarter touchdowns throughout the season as well too. So if you can't have one, you better have a little bit more of the other on top of it. And it's just a vicious cycle. I mean, we've been talking about this offense for how long now, about slow starts and points and opening drive possessions and yada yada. The only saving grace here's what some of my thoughts quickly on Russell Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
I think Russell Wilson was just slightly better than what I anticipated him being, if that makes sense. I think he was 98. I think he was 100% as advertised. I think that they got maybe 2% better out of him than what I thought that they would get out of him, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my thought was basically when they signed him that he could get them to a playoff win. So I guess it fell short from that respect, but it came in a general same vein of what I thought it would be. I just saw the regression, and you see teams play more zone. You see teams rotate coverages more often. You see him be unable to work concepts, getting off his first read. He starts, panicking and bailing and throwing the ball away. And I mean, I thought he made some, showed the arm talent, still made some great downfield throws, but I mean, that's really still been his only way to win consistently is with some of those vertical shots and chucking it deep. And I think in terms of being able to actually work and progress through concepts, it was a real pain point down the stretch.
True or false? That what we just saw is the absolute best that you can expect out of Russell Wilson at this point of his career. Was that the absolute best that you can expect out of Russell Wilson moving forward?
Yes.
Yes. I agree. Look, I mean, he only threw 5 interceptions. I mean, I say that only, but one obviously was a damaging pick 6. One, do you remember the interceptions? That's a good exercise to have. The pick 6, obviously. The one early in the season, wasn't it kind of forcing the ball over to the left side? Off the receiver's hands or something like that. I'm trying to remember what that one was. Trying to even remember.
I mean, there was for 1 week 11 against Baltimore in the end zone, the lollipop to Darnell.
The lollipop to Darnell. Yeah, that one definitely should not have happened.
I just need. If I looked at the list of games, I could probably tell you game by game. The Kansas City one, obviously in the end zone, that got a whole lot of buzz there. You know what I'm talking about, right? On the Pickens, that you on the right route. That whole thing. The other one's blanking on at the moment.
But I mean, for the amount of passes that he had, and the interception rate was like what 1.5%. I mean, you could live with that. Now, obviously, the fumble, the sacks. That's just who that guy is. We talked ahead of the season that both these quarterbacks, were coming off of what, like 50 sack seasons.
Yeah, and he was sacked. I mean, Pittsburgh was sacked 49 times the regular season. Russ 4 more in the playoff game, so it's always been part of his game, and that's not going to get better going forward.
Right. But I mean, we both agree that was the best that you can expect to get out of Russell Wilson, what we saw this season.
Yeah, and is that worth paying whatever market value? I'm not even sure what number that would be at right now.
Well, you most definitely can't put yourself in a situation where you are locked into him for a 17-game season. You've got to have wiggle room where if things don't go well, if you re-sign him, you can go away from that. And that number, it certainly isn't $30 million. It's got to be below that. And will he be willing to pay for such a number? Play for such a number. So the reality of this is we might very well be staring at Justin Fields' season in the face.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning towards in terms of a preference right now, but I still want to spend some time here, sort out my thoughts. But that's kind of the thought that was in my head last night, this morning. Bottom line is the run game's got to get going here. I know circumstance was an impact in terms of it waning down the stretch, but it's not even close to the sole reason. You talk about changes that could actually get made. I think Pat Meyer, the O-line coach, I'm not sure where he's at contractually, but
he's got to go.
You got to make a change there because collectively the group hasn't, has not progressed the way that it needed to progress given the investments in it. Yes, the offensive line had injuries early in the season, but down the stretch there wasn't cohesiveness. Look at the zone scheme; they were a mess. Arthur Smith is a zone scheme kind of a guy. Guys were not on the same track. Guys late in the second level. Too many free linebackers running through gaps and blowing plays up. Stunt pickup poor. I think you try to look for, assuming that Smith returns as OC, better alignment between O-line coach and offensive coordinators, or in terms of things that you could expect to happen. I think that's the most realistic thing that could happen with Pat Meyer.
I think you got to look at a lot of different aspects when it comes to the coaching staff. I think Pat Meyer definitely needs to be looked at for sure. I think your tight end coach Alfredo Roberts needs to be looked at for sure. I think you're right. I think a lot of the positions, obviously on the offensive side of the football, definitely need to be looked at here. Terrell Austin's probably maybe on the out and probably deserves to be as well too. I think you need to look at that aspect of it there, especially when you get run on. Not many coaches should survive 300-yard rushing games.
Yeah, the question is though, how much is it Austin? How much is it, Tomlin? And obviously Tomlin's influence on the defense is pretty great. So I'm pretty sure Austin is under contract through next year, through 2025. And we'll see if Pittsburgh makes a change. They typically let contracts expire and just don't bring guys back. But again, you go back to your point about precedent. You can't just keep doing things because that's the way you've done things. If you're going to make some real changes and take a look at yourself in the mirror.
And look, if you're going to stand pat with your head coach and your general manager, then you better make changes elsewhere.
But they did last year, and look where it got them. I mean, again, like I said, they make these changes that are a little more on the margins, and the results still always come back to you always all roads lead to Rome, and all Steelers changes lead to 9-8, 10-7, wild card, one and done. It's almost remarkable how Pittsburgh's able to change in a lot of ways so much and yet get the same exact results. It's a real Groundhog Day type world they're living in right now.
And look, does Arthur Smith deserve a head coaching job elsewhere in the NFL? I say no. We'll see if he gets one. Maybe that'll be a godsend if he does get one. But you also look. Moving on in from us kind of talking in a circle here. What is the most paramount offseason decision outside of coaching, or let's narrow it just to roster right out of shoot with this team? You've got 0 quarterbacks under contract for 2025. You have got to get that direction figured out right out of the bat here, and definitely before the draft, and probably before the start of the new league year in March. That is the first paramount. What direction are we going to go with at the quarterback? None of them, all 3 of them, 2 of them, 1 of them, whatever. You've got to get that figured out first. And at the same time here, over these next few meetings here, the quarterback that you think that you're going to go with there, does Arthur Smith and what he does offensively or can do, does it match that quarterback there? From there, if you choose to go with Arthur Smith as your offensive coordinator, it's time for him to handpick his success or demise as far as position coaches go. If he says you got to get rid of the O-line coach and he has a guy that can fit, that he thinks fits his personnel, what he wants to do, that's the guy you bring in. Same with running back coach, same with tight ends coach, up and down the board there. But that's the first major decision this team has before anything else, because you got to have a quarterback, and they've got 0 under contract right now.
Yeah, I agree. It's great framing, and yeah, quarterbacks can be the big one out of the gate. And you talk about one of those hidden underbellies about why Pittsburgh's run game hasn't been successful. The offense has struggled. Look at a team like the Eagles. It's with the legendary job that Jeff Stoutland, their O-line coach, has done. Pittsburgh has had some real whiffs along the O-line, making O-line coach hires since Mike Munchak left. They promote Sean Surratt. They tried Adrian Clem. They went to a bunch of guys there. Meyer's tenure's been pretty. It's been longer than the others, but it's been pretty meh overall. And so when you don't make those solid O-line coach hires, your whole offense really feels it, and they're feeling it.
All right. We've got plenty of time to roll down the list of free agents here coming up in even as early as Monday, right? We're going to do a show Monday still.
Yeah, I was planning to. I'm not entirely sure when Tomlin's going to do his year-end press conference. If that'll be a Monday thing, a Tuesday thing. If it's a Monday thing, we'll probably wait later Monday and recap things post Tomlin presser. If not, we'll do it Monday morning. But yeah, I still figure we can do a Monday show and stay on our schedule for ourselves.
All right. At that time, we'll roll through the 80 something mad emails we have, I think, as well, too. I mean, today was more of a vent day, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. We honestly did our best to not even talk about the game because it was so just the game itself was so on its face about how poor it was overall. It wasn't how much is there really to be said about it? Well, Pittsburgh just got their butt kicked up and down the field for 60 minutes on primetime television, online primetime television, I guess, if that's such a thing.
All right. Do you think? I mean, you obviously in a position now where you think the Steelers should fire Mike Tomlin?
No, I didn't say that. I don't know where I come in on my feelings on that. The easy answer is obviously to say to can him. I wanted to get your perspective and just talk out some of the stuff. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it because as you well agree that the odds of that happening are so slim. It's hardly even really worth having a lot of that conversation for myself to think about. But the question that I ask you is the question I ask myself about. What is the case for keeping a Mike Tomlin? What is the reason to believe that things will get better, that things will change, and that he's the guy capable of doing it? You have a lot of respect for what Mike Tomlin has done. So I'm clearly dancing around the answer here.
Here's the thing. If we don't have the discussion after a season like this, after a playoff exit like this, about entertaining the fact of could they, should they, then we're not doing our job. But that's why too, sometimes throughout the season, we get a lot of hypotheticals about insert whatever. If the Steelers do this, and people already looking, should they re-sign? We're 8 games into the season. We're being asked about should people be re-signed, this, that, and the other here. Okay, we had it. Once again, we could waste so much time and rant for the next 7 shows, Alex, about saying yes, they should fire Mike Tomlin. They should fire Omar Khan. But the fact of the matter is that they're very unlikely to do that. And it feels like we're not spending the energy on talking about directions they should go with them staying in the status quo,
Yeah, no, I get that. And I think we had a healthy discussion and, about where this team is going and the results they've been getting. And we've talked about as much as any, the playoff losing streak and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I still want to believe in Mike Tomlin, I guess. I mean, I still think, you felt like this year there were some things that were coming together and there's a lot of things that Tomlin obviously does well. And you just flummoxed of why you can't get any sort of traction. And it's just really really astounding.
I mean, we'll get to coming out of training camp next year and we'll be going, I don't know. Do you think maybe, you get that all start of this season, warm, fuzzy feeling and all like that. All I can leave people with right now with this show is I thought this was going to be a 9-8 team. They went 10-7. I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs. They made the playoffs. Alex thought this team would be a 10-7 team, make the playoffs and not win a playoff game. That's exactly what happened. I don't feel very optimistic looking at this roster, looking at the decisions, knowing how this team functions organizationally. I don't have a warm and fuzzy feeling about this team making a Super Bowl run in 2025.
Not even about Super Bowl run. I mean, because no one has a fuzzy feeling about that right now. But like, do you have a feeling they can get over this hump? Can they win a playoff game next year?
I mean, I think it's fathomable that they could at least win one, but beyond that, I'm definitely not there.
Yeah, and the evidence in the history of them just doing the same stuff and getting the same results.
All right. Anything else you'd like to? What do you think about the Chargers and the Texans? Boy, you think Herbert's your guy, and you go out and you get what do you have? 3 interceptions, 4 interceptions in that game?
Yeah, one hit off the Disley's hands, but
Right.
still, yeah. Excuse me, sir. Coughing terribly. Yeah, I mean, it's single elimination, and Houston, kudos to them.
All right, who's the best?
That's an example of a team turning things around, and they weren't getting quite as bad as Pittsburgh, but they can. That's an example of a team really turning things around.
Yeah, are the Ravens a Super Bowl? Are the Ravens going to the Super Bowl? I think they can.
They certainly can. Will they be my pick? I don't know, but they certainly can.
I don't think the Chiefs get back there. I'll say that. I don't think the Chiefs get back. I think the Chiefs are vulnerable. So obviously, I don't think the Texans can win it all. And if I just said that,
You're a big Bills team. You're hot in Buffalo.
I think the Ravens can beat Buffalo.
Okay, yeah, we'll see.
All right. Anything else? We're not going to have time to get to these emails. A lot of it's going to be rehashing what we talked about. So we'll try to get to we'll try to make it more of a 50-50 split, maybe with emails on the Monday show. All right.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Maybe give you another 24 hours to repair your voice. All right. As always, you can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button up right navigation bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Continue on with the emails. We'll try to get through some of these as much. A big Vince session today, as you can obviously see, and kind of a predictable one based on how things have transpired here over the last 24 hours. So until Monday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.